Well, everybody, we're going to try something a little different here, and I just want to welcome you all to what I've somewhat coined and christened as, what did I say it was? See, I don't even know. Oh, right, Getting Connected with a K-E at the beginning. That's sort of what I've called this non-series first attempt at trying to host a couple of friends on the channel. And the reason how this all came up is back in October of 2021, Adam over here from GoFigure had said, hey, Ken, you know, we should try something on your channel sometime. And I'm like, we can, if I can get StreamYard or something working. And then a couple months later, Xazyl over there on GoFigure was like, hey, why don't you come on? I got a StreamYard account. So I went on his channel, and next thing you know, we're all here on StreamYard right now, and Xazyl's graciously agreed to let us use his account. So now I've got something for the channel that involves something other than just my stupid-ass voice. All right. Now, so gentlemen, why don't you take a second? Yeah.
Go, right?
Yeah. So why don't you guys introduce yourselves? Adam, I got you kind of clockwise to me, so why don't you start?
All right, yeah, I'm Adam from GoFigure, and we usually take kind of battered and broken up toys and fix them up. And I met Ken about a year ago, right when we kind of both launched our channels and kind of hit it off as friends there. So we've been kind of collaborating since. So we've been waiting for a while to do this, and it's exciting to be here. I'm pumped up.
Yeah, and I know you on Facebook too. So all the Canadian groups, everyone kind of knows each other. So yeah, what about you, Xazyl? What's your life story in 20 seconds or less?
Well, hi, Adam. It's good to meet you. My name is Xazyl, spelt like it is on the screen, but often mispronounced, misspelt, and sometimes just omitted completely. But I'm from Sergeant Slaughter's Slaughterhouse. I'm a one-trick pony. Everything I talk about is Sarge-related. But I also do the Slaughterhouse Wrestling Championship, which is a play motion style action figure wrestling entertainment. And other than that, and hosting Welcome to the Slaughterhouse, my life story is very, very boring.
His brother would say something different, and I'm sure his mom would say something different. But you know, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Okay.
I love that you're like committed though. You're like, if it's not Sergeant Slaughter, I don't want it. Get
out of here. Yeah.
You're dismissed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's Slaughter.
So, yeah. So the topic that I chose today,
that's right.
And the two gentlemen here are, you know, the two I definitely wanted to have on this chat if we were going to venture down this route was the big three of 1980s toys, namely G.I. Joe, Masters of the Universe, and Transformers. And those words, big three of the 80s, is really only something that I began to hear in the last 5 or 6 years or so. And they kind of just christened that term because in the boys' toy market in the 1980s, there seemed to be very few things that could really overtake those. I mean, yes, Ninja Turtles was probably just as big, but the toy line really started in 88. Star Wars kind of fizzled by 84, and the last movie was in 83. So the big three was dominated mostly by, as I mentioned earlier, MOTU, Joes, and Transformers. And this is kind of a generalized discussion. And it's been a while since I've done a Transformers video on this channel, even though I keep telling myself I'm going to do another one. And the last one I think I released was around New Year's Eve of last year. And then other than that, other than talking about Fortress Maximus in my top 10 playsets, I realized, you know what? People are going to start forgetting that I'm a Transformers fan at all.
Yeah, it's very subtle, very subtle.
It's very, very subtle. Although I did talk about them on that one big three 80s toys plus Barbie semi-debate, fun busting balls debate that we had on Xazyl's Welcome to the Slaughterhouse podcast, which, by the way, to plug that, guys, I do have a playlist on this channel as well of the Welcome to the Slaughterhouse episodes. So the viewers of this channel, I hugely encourage you guys to check those out and to check out my recommended channels as well, where I've got both Sergeant Slaughter Slaughterhouse and GoFigure and a couple other channels on here as well. So yeah, so let's maybe launch right into it and maybe just talk about our favorite character. You know, we'll do one franchise at a time. So why don't we start with Masters of the Universe? And Adam, you tell us who your favorite Masters of the Universe character was.
Okay, well, it's tough, right? Because I think as adult collectors who take this very seriously, like these playthings of our childhood, we wanna look back and say, like, my favorite is this like really obscure, like I really like Scareglow or whatnot. But like if we need to be honest, like if your favorite Masters of the Universe character wasn't He-Man, like you're lying to yourself, right? Like as a kid, everybody had a different 7, but of that, everybody had He-Man there. Like he was the linchpin that tied the line together. But for me, I will go a little bit deeper. My favorite is Battle Armor He-Man. That was the one that I had as a kid. That was my first one. So I was born in 81. So by the time I was like 3-4 years old wanting to buy a He-Man figure, to buy the harness He-Man was near impossible. Like, I never once saw him in the store as a kid. I got mine at a yard sale. But I did get Battle Armor He-Man right away. So for me, that Battle Armor He-Man and Battle Armor Skeletor are kind of together. Those two are, the quintessential Masters of the Universe figures. In my display, those are the ones that are riding Battle Cat and Panther because they hold the
cool
piece of prominence for me.
That's cool. That's a good point, actually. And I'll circle back to that when I have my answer. But if you're done there, Adam, Xazyl, why don't you tell us your top dog of He-Man?
Wait, are we PG? Are we allowed to swear on your show, Ken?
Depends whether my son decides to watch this episode or not. Nah, I'm too boring. I'm too boring, so he probably won't watch. But yeah,
I was going to say screw He-Man. Actually, I was going to say that a little bit more adult than that. No, but look, Adam, you're actually right, because it's He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, right? So if you were enjoying the cartoon, then you were looking at pretty much Prince Adam / He-Man from the very beginning of that show, and you're following his adventures essentially from the beginning. So you're not tuning in to see Buzz Off or Whiplash or whatever, because you're barely going to see him. So you do have to sort of be a He-Man fan to allow that sort of overflow onto other characters. Having said that, my first He-Man was the Power Punch He-Man, which I absolutely loved. Just the classic caps in the back. If we have to pick a He-Man, that was my He-Man. But He-Man, when I was collecting Masters of the Universe, oftentimes I would go a little bit sort of left field. I always had, and this goes with any line really, is I was never really into the super popular character, because it was, because I grew up with two brothers as well. It's better, one older than me, which would often get top pick, and then one lower than me that, would get the whatever we let him have, right?
Right.
So I would start looking at characters that would maybe give them a little bit more of an intense look at, like as I'm shopping. And another thing you have to think about too when you're shopping with your parents is that you don't have that much disposable income. You've got whatever pocket money you've got. So you've got to make that choice. You're standing there in the toy aisle and you're like, do I want this guy or do I want this guy? Do I need another, Skeletor? Or am I going to grab something that visually looks cool? Or have I seen it in the cartoon? But having said that, there's a long-winded story to say Fisto is my favorite. If I can, I got the most action out of Fisto, which is a weird way of putting it now that I've said it out loud. But but I do have a very strong connection with Man-at-Arms. Man-at-Arms was my favorite character from the cartoon. Coming up, and He-Man was actually second. I'd always enjoy having watching Man-at-Arms. I don't know why, and I really don't know why. It's just one of those kid brain moments. You're like, oh, Man-at-Arms is on the screen. But my granddad, he actually gave me Man-at-Arms as a kid. And so I think he must have had a conversation with my mum about it, right? There's no way he's going to go out looking for Masters of the Universe and go, this is the guy that he likes, right? He'd have no clue.
Right.
But I remember my mum asking me who my favorite character was. And I was like, in He-Man. And I was like, Man-at-Arms. And she was like, is it not He-Man? I was like, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, He-Man, sure. Yeah. But Man-at-Arms. You're right, yeah, but Man-at-Arms is my favorite. So when we went to go visit my granddad, he presented me with my first Man-at-Arms action figure. And so I have the memory of collecting that from my grandfather, precious memory. It was my favorite character. If he had given me a different character, I'd still love that memory. It'd be a great memory. And that character probably by extension would be in my top list of characters. But the fact that I was able to get my favorite character at the time by my granddad actually, elevates that memory for me.
100%. So, that's awesome.
Yeah. Anyway, I rambled.
No, that's a pretty good way of answering the question. And just to circle back to what Adam said there about getting the harness He-Man versus the battle armor one. So a lot of people don't know this. I was actually born in the Philippines, right? I came to Canada in 1986, and my family is actually not Filipino, but we were born there. Whole nother like biography, life story. But because overseas we got things later. It had to have been 1985, maybe early 86, but I'm going to say 85. I was able to get the harness He-Man on the stores in the Philippines just because we got it later. They shipped like a year later, and then we're on shelves a year longer or whatever. So I was a bit fortunate that I was able to get that. Now, those toys did not survive to adulthood. But with regards to my favorite character, answering my own question here, if you'd asked me as a kid, it would have been He-Man. You asked me as an adult, I actually am very much tied to He-Man. I would say it's actually Battle Cat. And I think that it's because, and in a way, it's like answering the same thing, right? Okay, you don't like the main character, but you like the steed he's always riding, or the pet he's always, around. And what it is, it's just the most unique of the characters. He's his own character. He's a steed, but he also talks. He's got two personas that are completely opposite of each other. I just find that in today's world for creativity, because I'm not sure if they were going for creativity back then or just coolness and for boys to buy the toys, but the creativity of it and how it lasted for Battle Cat stands out for me more as an adult because, yes, Orko is very unique because he's a magician, but he's mostly there for comic relief. He serves the same purpose that Slimer serves on the Ghostbusters, or not so much in the early seasons, but by the third season of the Transformers, which we'll get to, Grimlock is very much comic relief, right? He's walking around in an apron serving Energon goodies and tumbling around and doing silly things, and and like even like T-Bob and Scott were semi-comic relief in Mask, although I found I only laughed at about a third of the jokes, and the Ninja Turtles had their own comic relief moments. They would alternate between Raph and Michelangelo or Vernon from Channel 6, but I just found that Orko was a comic relief even if he was unique by being a magician. Battle Cat to me is that one that makes the line stand out.
I love that. I love that. It's funny too. Like, I don't know if you guys relate to this or not, but I took Masters of the Universe like so serious as a kid that like I never owned Orko because it was just a waste of a figure. I'm like, I'm not gonna play with them. I'm not gonna be cracking jokes. Right? We've got He-Man versus this like skeleton demon and this castle and like all this like super badass like barbarian stuff, and then you want me to like play like jokes and make up like zany situations for Orko. I'm like, there's no time for it. So the comic relief characters, like even Slimer in my Ghostbusters, I never got Slimer first off because he was egregiously out of scale. Didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
That thing. But I was like, ghosts are the bad guys in this story. Like in the story where I'm playing Ghostbusters, I don't want to have like a friend. Like the ghosts are the ones that we're gonna like go there and bust. So I took it very seriously, and I think like part of my attraction to Masters of the Universe was like my favorite movie or one of my favorite movies. And maybe it's because he was just on all the time, but like the Beastmaster as a kid.
Right. Yeah.
It was so, and it was on like the TV edited version. So you could watch it at like 5 years old and you're okay. And it was like this blonde barbarian hanging out with a huge cat. And there's like a bird going around. He's going to fight this demon. I'm like, this is essentially as close to He-Man the movies we're going to get. And then it happened in 87. But I was like, I was like, this is like in my mind, I'm like, these have to be connected somehow. So I took it very earnestly. It was my play was a very earnest interpretation of Masters of the Universe.
Nice. Well, no, those are very, very interesting way to look at it. Like, I never thought about making that connection between Beastmaster, but now that you have, and on the point of Slimer, I'm literally looking at my one over there. There's a reason why I bought the version 2 Slimer from '89 rather than the 80. What year would it have been? 86 when the real Ghostbusters line came out, because you're right, it's way out of scale, and he doesn't have the goofy look. Like at least the '89 one has the more innocent Slimer look. But okay, so before we circle back to He-Man in a bit here, why don't we all go over our favorite G.I. Joe character? And don't be afraid to pick a bad guy, because I'm sure somebody out there is screaming at the camera saying Skeletor was my favorite. You know, and
Yeah.
that would be a legit answer, right? So,
Well, the good thing about having favorites is that you can have your own favorite. It doesn't matter, right?
Right.
Absolutely. So
I do want to say though, I did have Orko. He was part of my collection, and I loved his magic tricks that came along with it. But I don't know. I didn't. Whenever I got a Masters of the Universe action figure, it was usually on a birthday or Christmas or whatever. And I know Orko was one of those ones I got on a birthday. But you're right. If I'm standing there and I'm going, oh man, do I want to pick up Fisto or do I want to pick up Orko? You're probably going to go with the one that's going to go on many more adventures. And just Ken, just a heads up, buddy, you're doing that thing with your microphone again where you keep hitting it on your zipper. Yeah.
Okay.
We can keep doing that for the entire show if you like, or I can bring it up 15 minutes in. But
no, that's totally fine. Let's go with that.
We do a drinking game. Every time it clicks, they take a drink.
Yeah.
All right. So favorite GI Joe, and now like my favorite GI Joe is a hot take, and I don't know if like I got a Sergeant Slaughter purist over here. I don't know if I'm going to out there, but to me it was Chuckles.
Right. Yes.
I love that figure so much.
Yeah.
I remember the day that so we live in a very small town called Nipigon, Ontario. It's up northern Ontario. And it was about an hour away from like the closest like epicenter. So it was Thunder Bay, Ontario. So we'd go there once a month to Thunder Bay, and we would look in the toy section at Zellers. You get to pick something. And, you know, it was one of those things when my mom would do the shopping for the month. So she'd like, okay, the 80s was crazy because you'd be like 8 years old. Parents like, you stay here in the toy aisle. We'll be back in 4 hours. And you're like, okay.
Yeah.
But it was okay because there was enough to look at for 4 hours, right? It was so fast. Yeah. And I remember just having like seeing Chuckles and picking him up and being so like, there's this guy in a Hawaiian shirt. He's got like a little pistol. He just seems like, to me, he just seemed like the coolest GI Joe ever. And so I just held him the whole time. Like, there's no question. This is what I'm taking home today.
And that holster, what a great way to put, you know, had that even happened before then? I don't think so.
I don't think, especially like the over the shoulder.
A removable one, I don't think so. Like, I want to say Brave Star guys had their straps like that, but I don't think they were removable.
No. But yeah, it was just cool. And like the idea of him being kind of like a secret agent and like, I don't know, he just seemed like he wasn't the strict military guy that we were used to at that point in time.
Yeah.
Well, there was also that 4-issue IDW run they had with Chuckles going undercover and all that. That was, I mean, the IDW run of G.I. Joe, I know it's quite varied. It's hard to find a good jumping point to jump in. But when I read that series, I was like, wow, this is really, really well written. So yeah, good choice. Anyway, Xazyl, should I just ask you your second favorite? Would that be
well, G.I. Joe is one of those ones where we had a lot of them growing up because like I said, I had two brothers. So when we were all getting Joes, that's like you instantly have a squad. You know, you've got, you know, and then you can, if you're getting along with your brothers, if they're not playing with their toy, you can grab a couple of extra Joes in their collection, and you can, you know, you don't have to necessarily have a favorite. You can just pick up whatever and attach yourself to it. I did have Chuckles, actually, now that you mentioned Chuckles, he was the first one I bought with my own pocket money, right? It wasn't a gift. It wasn't, I had money. I'm going down the shops and I'm going to pick up an action figure, and Chuckles was that one. However, he was my version of Duke. He was the I couldn't find Duke anywhere. I couldn't Tiger Force or whatever. I couldn't find him. So he was just, for a long time, wasn't even Chuckles. It was just Casual Fridays Duke.
It was Weekend at Bernie's Duke.
Right. And then I saw him in the movie, and then I was like, maybe he can still be Duke. You know, he hasn't exactly. He's thrown a large missile and annoyed Beachhead. But I guess if I had a favorite as a kid, because I never owned a Sergeant Slaughter, which was unfortunate, as much as I tried, the one that I did have the most playtime with was Leatherneck. Another moustached Marine.
Yep, so, I was gonna say.
Yeah. So I had a Marine with a mustache. I just didn't have Sarge, and I picked him out because I also saw him in the first episode of G.I. Joe that I ever watched as a kid, which was Ninja Holiday. So I actually saw Leatherneck in action before I saw Sarge come in. So I was like, oh, this guy's pretty cool. And then in comes charging Sarge, like, this guy's even cooler. But yeah, I guess Leatherneck for me. Leatherneck, if I had to pick one as a kid, that one. But there's so many, it's hard to pick just one.
It is, right? I mean, for me, it was actually Flint. And
Right.
I just liked his firm voice. I liked that he was more or less, yes, General Hawk was there later on, but like I liked that Flint was like the field second in command. So he could be a soldier, he could be a leader. He could lead one squad, Duke could lead the other squad. But I found his firm demeanor and his tougher, rougher voice just cooler than Duke, because Duke was a little too much of what became christened in wrestling as the white meat babyface, kind of like the term that you see on internet articles. That's just me quoting the word that I heard, right? I don't, that's not something for me, for viewers of this channel. I didn't make that up. But I just found that Duke was a little too much like, he's a little too Captain America-ish, right? Whereas Flint had the best traits of that, but was still himself, and because he wears a beret, just makes him cooler, right?
Right.
And I mean, like, I wasn't able to get Flint like the first version or even the Tiger Force version. I did get Tiger Force Duke, thankfully, but I didn't get Flint. Now, when I did finally get him was when I got back into G.I. Joe as an 11-year-old, and I was able to get the Eco Warriors version, which is nothing the same, but I can at least say that I had a childhood Flint, even if it was
no beret, outrageous
colors and no beret, and he had that weird helmet. And I'm looking at this. I'm looking at it all these years later, and even back then, I kind of felt that way. I'm like, this is not Flint. Nah, whatever. At least I have a childhood Flint, right? So that's why I like that character, right? That's for straight up Joe. If like Xazyl, if it's overall personality, it's got to be Sarge, because he crossed over into other things, right? Just like he asked me my favorite wrestler, it's Bret Hart, but he asked me my favorite overall crossover personality. Yeah, it's Sarge, right?
Well, sure. I mean, I see a lot of people commenting saying that Sarge was the worst part of G.I. Joe, and don't enjoy his inclusion in it, which is fine. That's fine. But yeah, it's a weird scenario to be in, where you have a real life personality invade the cartoon pretty much, and be one of the major talking points, one of the major characters, one of the major pushers of the line, advertising the line itself. It's a great marketing tool for sure at the time. And I can't remember other than, who else did that?
Well, like Chuck Norris had his own cartoon where he played himself.
Right. Yeah, right? Yeah. And Mr. T, yeah.
But those were based around them. This wasn't like an injection of somebody else into a pre-existing universe, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I can't imagine the toy line without Sarge. Like, he's so central to me. And I know he wasn't in the earliest episodes, but like even the theme song when he rolls out in the Triple T and jumps out and punches Monkey Wrench, like that to me is G.I. Joe, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, a lot of people don't like him, but I can't picture Joe without him.
You said you never had him as a kid. I remember him being like almost mythical, where you're like, I know that toys exist, but like, you have to mail, because there was a mailway one for a while.
Yeah.
And my Sergeant Slaughter, I found walking home from school in a ditch.
Wow! How cool is that?
I remember I picked him up and I was like looking around, like, do I see any kids within the vicinity? Like, is this going to happen? And you very nervously walk home. And you're like, if I get to my house, he's mine. That's if someone's like, hey, hold on. But that never happened. I got home and I was like, oh, and you took him, you washed him, and he was, all of a sudden I had Sarge, and it was like free new toy day. You didn't expect that. It wasn't a birthday.
Yeah, that's so cool. Which version was it?
Yeah, I was gonna ask.
It was the black tank top version.
Oh, okay, so Triple T
version 2. Yeah. Wow, that's
so the
cool.
only one that I did see in stores was the Marauders Sarge. So for some reason we didn't have the mail away offer here. And in fact, when the fridge was offered in Australia as a mail away, it was actually part of an ice cream promotion. So that's how we were able to get the fridge here. But perfect. The mail away, as far as I know, we didn't get. The Triple T was definitely advertised on Australian TV, and it was advertised with its own unique animation for it. And they pretty much copied the original, the live action stuff. They pretty much copied from the original commercial, but they used the store-bought Triple T Sarge and not the prototype that's used in the American version. Warthog I never saw in stores either. I would have loved to have had that option. The only one I saw was Marauders. I picked it up and I was like, it's just not the Sarge I want. So I put him back and never saw him again until many, 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 many years later as an adult. And then I collect all of them. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, that's quite the story. Yeah, I mean, I was in my 20s when I got my first Sarge figure, so you're not alone there. So, all right, so we got one toy line left on this particular round. Transformers. Did anyone have a favorite? Yeah,
I'll start, and this is maybe going to get me some heat. I hope not.
Right.
Like, as a child and as an adult, like, not a Transformers fan. Like, I know that the cartoon was great, the content was great, but as a toy line, even as a kid, I was like, these are so out of scale. Like, the scale thing is a big deal for me. And if you lost He-Man's sword or his axe, he was still He-Man. Like, he still had He-Man to play with. The Transformers, because you could, like, if you had Optimus Prime, you could lose his fists. Like, started quickly into the play. I'm like, so I just didn't, as a kid, I didn't ever think they were that great of a toy. However, I did get for Christmas one year Sunstreaker, and I was really
cool.
I was really into Lamborghinis at the time. So because of his Lamborghini car mode, I'll say he was my favorite.
But you could lose his fists.
You could lose like
those little yellow fists.
It was a Transformer for a child in the 80s was a famine or feast. They were either going to love it or they were going to hate every second of it. Those are the two options.
Yeah, pretty much.
I guess I enjoyed the cartoon. I would watch the cartoon every day after school, but for some reason, when they were playing it on TV, it would by the time I got home, it was always just finishing where the intro was. So I used to have to like just fast walk or run home if I was going to catch the opening, because part of the enjoyment is watching that theme song.
Yeah.
I don't know why they timed it like that. It's just like we got to get home to watch this stuff, guys. Come on. But I had a fondness for those ones that weren't cars or planes or whatever. So I had Soundwave. I loved Soundwave. I had Perceptor, which was none of my brothers were fighting over me to try and play with Perceptor. I knew that guy was mine. So if it had an alt mode that was a little bit out of the ordinary, wasn't a car or a truck or whatever, that sort of caught my eye more. In fact, I was talking to my brother the other day and I was like, did we have any of the original cast, like of cars, like Prowl or Jazz or anyone? He's like, I don't think so. We had like mini bots because they were just easy to pick up, like Cliff Jumper and Bumblebee and stuff like that. Beachcomber was a personal favorite of the mini bot ones. But yeah, it's Soundwave and Perceptor for me.
Nice. Well, I like those because those come from the micro change line rather than the Diaclone line. So speaking of things that are out of scale, I guess when you mix multiple toy lines together, that's exactly how it comes out. For me, actually, before I launch into the story of my favorite, I do remember now that a number of months ago when I was guesting on Adam's channel, he asked me what my white whale was. And going tiny bit off topic before I circle back, and I said that I really wanted the Diaclone battle convoy, the Diaclone Optimus. And I don't know if you saw Adam, but I did eventually get him.
I saw that. It's incredible.
A month after I said that to you, and I talked about how I regretted passing it up in the past and all that, a month later, it came up locally from like one of my best friends. And I'm like, how did this come up? Right? So it was like, anyway. As for my favorite character, I'm going to say Ultra Magnus. Very much for the same reasons as Flint, right? He could be the leader, but he could be a soldier. In fact, he says, I'm just a soldier, Prime. I'm not worthy. And it's that level of humbleness of that character that I like to emulate as a person. There's a lot of people out there who lavish and think of themselves as Optimus Prime. And I'm like, yeah, but Optimus is a little too perfect, right? You talk about a white meat baby face type, but he's a robot, so it kind of hides it cosmetically, but he's a little too perfect, right? Ultra Magnus was flawed, couldn't open the Matrix. He had self-doubt. You know, he wouldn't always beat Galvatron. In fact, he'd usually lose against Galvatron, you know. And if he did beat Galvatron, it's because he'd grab him, throw him, and then he'd get into the shuttle and leave, right?
Right.
So, and the toy was just that cool, right? It had the small robot form, the big robot form. It had the truck. It was bigger than your other Transformers, although that still drove me a little crazy because of the scale issue of it, you know. But that was my favorite, even to this day. Like when I got the Masterpiece version, the MP22, about 8-9 years ago, super duper happy with it, right? Just one of the greatest toys ever. Yet at the same time, a very relatable character, right? I like to see some relatability in the character where it's a pure character, like a pure good guy, but not somebody who's too perfect, right? So, yeah. So I guess we made that one very lengthy round about our favorites. But
with all, I guess you could lose his fist twice.
Yeah, you could lose his fist twice. Yeah. I would just leave the big robot ones attached on, so I wouldn't lose them, and I still do that to this day. Well, I guess there's no choice really.
Did the Prime that came with Ultra Magnus come with the fists as well for Prime?
Yeah, the small fists. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
And if you figured it out, when you put him in the big robot mode, you would hide the fifth inside the cab. Inside the cab.
Itself, on paper, they're unlosable, but in reality, very losable.
Very
big time, big time. Yeah. So I mean, with regard to the big three, I mean, we can just do kind of an open one without a format here. But what are your guys' fondest memories of the big 380s in general, even if it's just 2 out of the 3?
Yeah, no. Again, I think like getting my first He-Man. I remember specifically we were going to the airport to pick up my grandparents who were coming down for a visit, and there was a Zellers near the airport in Thunder Bay, so we went there.
Ah, good old Zellers.
And they had a bin, like a dump bin of on sale, right? And I just remember my mom, again, it was just like, hey, you can pick one if you want. And I was like, oh, and then you just like are digging through. And I had the Battle Armor He-Man in my hand, but I was also like looking for the harness He-Man. I'm like, maybe there's one in here, right? But never. Yeah. Still being super excited about that. So then getting the Battle Armor He-Man, and then when my grandparents got off the plane, they bought me Battle Cat as well. So it was like
a nice.
And so it was like, it couldn't have been a better day. And so again, I think those first things get you into the line when you were a kid, like you were talking about, like Chuckles being your first one you bought with your own money. Right?
Yeah.
Whatever the hook was that got you in, that was it. So having He-Man and Battle Cat, and then it's also you take them home and you're so excited and you're like, well, now who's this guy going to fight? Like, how do I get Skeletor now? Like that becomes your next mission. And then, especially with a line like Masters, where it's so deep and so like every day after school it's so permeating into your culture. It became like it just grows out of control.
Yeah.
Control. Yeah.
Well, yeah. It looks like, well, at least it's displayed well. If it's I guess if we're looking at memories, I've got so many start flooding in. Like you got the imagery of the toy aisles and what it was like to get to. Me and my brothers used to run to the toy aisle. We would be dodging old ladies just to try and get there, right? I am honestly surprised we weren't kicked out. We were literally fleeing towards. That's not even a real term. How can you flee towards that? We were running towards the toy aisle and just in awe of everything. And you when my kids were much younger, they're taller than me now, but when my kids were much younger and we go past the toy aisle, I'd be like, oh man, you guys have no idea. You guys don't know what we had. But I guess some other than the Man-at-Arms memory that I have with my granddad, one of my favorite memories of and it's G.I. Joe related, was we used to live in a small mining town in northern Australia, the Northern Territory of Australia. And they had a swimming pool there that was just open to whoever was in the town. You didn't have to pay to get in. It was just gated. Like, it was a great pool, but it was just unmanned. It was just walk in and walk out as you want, right? And so we used to grab all our Joes, put them all in a bag, and play in this pool like it was like an ocean, right? And because there weren't many kids living in this town either, most of the time we were there on our own, me and my brother, just playing. We had the whole pool to ourselves playing G.I. Joe. But there was a couple of other kids that also collect toys that would sometimes show up. And they had Joes, and they're like, you can't play G.I. Joe in the pool. It's got chlorine. It's got, you're going to rust the screws. You're going to break the O-ring. And I'm like, I've got these toys so that I can do this stuff. I'm going to play in the dirt. I'm going to play in the mud. I'm going to play in the pool. And if I don't have any of them now, but that's fine. I have those memories of that, though. Imagine if I listened to those kids, I was like, you know what? I am not going to play in the pool with my Joes. You're right. I'm going to keep these crystal clean. And then what? And then what memory have you got?
Yeah.
Nothing. You got maybe a toy in your collection still. And when people say things like, oh, man, I wish I knew now what I knew then about the value of this, the real value is the memories that you're taking from that.
This guy gets it.
Yeah.
100% gets it.
Toys.
Well, it's funny when you're saying that. This memory came flooding back. So I grew up in Northern Ontario in Canada, and so my dad is like an outdoorsman. We spent a lot of times hunting and fishing as a kid, and we went out one Saturday in the summertime to go out, and it's all Crown land up there, and so it's land that's just kind of owned by Her Majesty the Queen. So nobody owns it. Anybody can just go use it. And so we had our truck, and we were towing our dune buggy, which is like this kind of like old Volkswagen kind of frame that we take out and go partridge hunting kind of thing. And I had like my G.I. Joes, like my Alpha Squad, who was Dusty, Chuckles, Falcon, Muskrat, and Sergeant Slaughter, just to make sure you're on my team here.
Yeah.
And like white Tonka Jeep was the Jeep they would go around in. It was incredible.
Right.
But my dad hit a mud hole with the truck, and I was like 8 at the time, and got stuck real bad out in the middle of nowhere, and spent the whole day trying to like get the truck unstuck. And so Mom and him were like having a very stressful day. But
I bet.
I was in the middle of the forest, and I had G.I. Joe's. And I remember it was like the greatest playscape ever, because there was like a creek there, and there was like a mud, and there was like rocks.
Yeah.
Can we just come here every weekend and play? And so looking back, as a dad now, that must have been a very frustrating day for my father. Like very, very frustrating. Didn't get to accomplish anything he wanted to do, but it was the greatest. It was the greatest G.I.
Well, somebody came out a winner in that story, I guess, right? But no, I couldn't imagine being your dad in that scenario. No. My short time I worked as a construction inspector, I have seen the bulldozer the loader gets stuck. Then they got to try to grab the winch and get the bulldozer to pull the loader. Oh, the bulldozer got stuck. So we sent the excavator in to get both of them out. And I just remember my superintendent having one of his worst afternoons at that particular time. So it kind of reminds me of that. Unfortunately, I wasn't a kid playing. I had to help him.
I would have loved it though if there's like backhoes and bulldozers getting stuck and you just cracked out some Joes and laid in the dirt. That would be the greatest.
The greatest thing ever. Yeah.
Just gonna have some time.
Yeah.
My earliest memories are actually mostly of a little bit of Transformers, but mostly of He-Man. Just having like at the dinner table and having He-Man sit there and Adam sit there and Orko. Those were, for me, he just seemed larger than life because he was a guy, and he was a guy you could follow, and there wasn't too much going on screen, right? Yeah. Like there was with some of the other cartoons. But then, as it relates to some of the memories, like the childhood memories you guys have, I know it was released in '87, but somehow in Canada here, it was still on shelves in '89. I got the Mobile Command Center G.I. Joe playset for a birthday in the first grade. And I remember, I don't know if I told the story before. I must have told it on a different channel. But when my mom asked me, there was a store called Toy City that's not too far from here. And she asked me what I wanted. And he had the Defiant on one side of the aisle and the Mobile Command Center on the other side. And I walked up to the Mobile Command Center box and I kissed it. I don't know why. I just did.
Right.
And one of the kids we were carpooling with from school on the way home, it was a lady, and she's like, "What did you just do? That was weird." And I'm like, "I want this." And my mom, eventually she did get it for me for my birthday, like a week later or 2 weeks later or whatever it was. And I just remember just having these amazing, like missions with it. You got this big target for Cobra to attack. You got this place for the Joes to hang out. You could do crossover battles if you want. And then a year later, again, it's a figure that was released earlier, but somehow was on shelves in 1990. We went to a toy store in the mall, and I picked up the Power Master Optimus Prime. And that was my second grade birthday gift. And I remember just taking that home and being like, man, this has got a base mode, it's got a trailer mode, it's got a big robot, a small robot, it's got the little guy in the chest, it's got all these extra guns, and it's as big as Ultra Magnus, and it's as big as Galvatron. So now I've got an Ultra Magnus, an Optimus, and a Galvatron that are in scale, and they can all fiddle, right? And Rodimus Prime was out of scale, but if you stood him on his trailer and put him on a ledge, you could kind of, and Shockwave was in scale. And I remember just those memories, like the birthday memories, were really good. And then being a bit of an older kid in the 90s, taking all my toys to my friend's house and doing crossover battles, whether it was the big three guys, or in his case, he had Superhuman Samurai, and we both had Power Rangers, and we had superheroes and whatnot. But just having a battlefield built around those big three 80s toys is just something that you can't replicate in today's day and age. Yeah.
Well, yeah, not today. You can't know, but I mean, if you're talking about heading into the 90s, we then got the Marvel character, the X-Men wave, Ninja Turtles, early 90s. So it's not like it died off in the 80s. It was sort of like slowly trickled away in the 90s. We had some great stuff in the 90s, and then heading out of the 90s is sort of just like, what do we do? What do we do now? Now we're collecting the things we used to have.
Yeah, I think once Power of the Force came out and
right
got introduced that like, hey, something that was old can be new again. That has really created what's been going on.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I was actually thinking about this the other day, and I was thinking that was probably the first time that adult collectors really started looking at investment. Like, they were picking up Power of the Force, they were even picking up Phantom Menace, thinking that these figures are going to be the valuable things later, like Star Wars was.
Yeah.
And before then, you didn't really see any of that stuff.
No.
I mean, I was still picking. I never stopped picking up action figures. I just started picking up specific things now. For as I got into a later teen, there was one time, I don't want to go too much and derail, Ken, but while I'm on the topic,
go ahead. Go right ahead.
When I was in high school, me and my friends and a couple of girls were all headed to this water park. And we were going by bus, and the bus stopped off at a supermarket or a shopping center or a shopping mall where I knew that there was a large toy store, and I hadn't been there in a while, right? And so now I'm hanging out with my friends. These guys aren't action figure collectors. I'm hanging out with some girls, and they're definitely not collecting action figures. But I need to think of an excuse to stop our trip to the water park very quickly, so that we can go and start looking for toys, see what's out there. And I think at the time I picked up I was trying to be subtle about it when we were going in there. But then as we got to the toy aisle of this, I picked up a Hawkeye from the, I'm trying to remember maybe it was an Iron Man wave Hawkeye from the Iron Man line in the 90s. Yeah. And at this point I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to be embarrassed about this. I want this Hawkeye. I'm going to get this Hawkeye. And if my friends don't think I'm cool, well, I don't care. And if these girls don't want to hang out with me, well, I don't care. But I'm going to go home and I'm going to have a Hawkeye with me in my Marvel collection. Anyway, that was in the end, they didn't care. They didn't care.
I remember having that exact experience in like the summer of '98, where I was like in this band, and there was this girl in this band, and I was like, and being out again, we were at a Zeller's, and I was like, oh, but the Power of the Force Emperor is out, and just making that mental decision, like, I'm going to buy this toy in front of this girl, in come what may. I'm just going to bolt.
Yeah. A decision was made that day.
Yeah.
The first condo that I owned, a good number of years ago. My whole collection was inside the den room. So depending on who came over, that den room door was either closed and my roommate was asleep, roommate asleep, or we just didn't go into that area of the apartment. Then I just realized, screw it, I'm just gonna leave that door open all the time. It's a little too core to what are they gonna do? Laugh? And if they laugh because they're looking down on me, well, I don't look down on them because they're missing out, as far as I'm concerned. And,
well, yeah. But your collecting habits, especially when you're a teenager, right? It doesn't impact anybody else. You know what I mean? Like if you like something and you want to find enjoyment out of it, it literally doesn't matter to anyone. I was collecting comic books as well at that time, and I was sort of keeping that a little quiet too. You know, now you could do that no problem, but then it was like, you know, I don't really talk about it. The only thing the positive thing that did come out of that experience though was that I found out that my other friend that was with us was a Warhammer collector and gamist and stuff. I didn't really get into the game, but that really opened up a whole different conversation between me and my friend. You know, and finding out that, you know, people do have these little things, you know, going on in the background that we're not so aware of, that they might be too embarrassed to talk about.
So I think it's actually gone the other way, Xazyl, when you're saying, like, you know, when you talked about collecting comic books as a kid, you maybe didn't talk about it much. I think people now don't collect comic books, but a new movie will come out and they're like, oh, like in the comic books, like Doctor Strange, they become this expert, and they're not even like a collector, but it's become like the vogue thing to be like a very versed comic book.
Right. I would have,
Well, it's like when WandaVision came out, right? I was like, why does this feel a lot like House of M? Because it is House of M, you know, like that's how I felt. And, you know, on the topic, like you guys said about Power of the Force, right? Comics was the same way. When Death of Superman came out, I got one copy because I was 11 years old, and a family friend came over. He saw me reading it, and he goes, "Oh, how come you don't have spare copies? You can make a lot of money off of this." And I'm like, "Really?
Right.
Well, okay, but you know, I don't have my own budget, so I just bought the one that I have." And funny thing is that's still a key issue, quote unquote, but it ranges from what, $20 to $40. Like it's not expensive because it's so easy to get, right? It's a key issue because it's super such a significant event. In fact, I think it was Superman 75. Someone will have to look that up. Yeah, just 75. In case my clock 75. Yeah, there you go.
It was a big deal back then. Even here in Australia, I only collected Marvel comics. It wasn't that I was against DC comics necessarily, but my mum used to buy my comics, and she used to buy, I don't know how she was able to afford it, but she would pick up every issue that was coming out that month that was available to us in the town that we were living in without fail every month. Every issue of every Marvel comic, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying we had a selection of every Marvel comic available at the time, but I was getting all the Spider-Man. I was getting the X-Men, probably West Coast Avengers, definitely. But, you know, and then, you know, whatever, like one-shot issues or whatever would turn up. But I did pick up the Superman Death of Superman comic because it was just it was on the news. It was just everywhere. So I was like, all right, I'll check it out. I know the characters. I know Batman. I know Superman. I just wasn't reading them. But
and it really led to some good stories with the Funeral for a Friend story, then the Reign of the Superman. Like those were like really cool.
Reign of the Superman. Yeah, I still have my originals. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Yeah. It's not as fun to read. Like I look at back, I'm definitely a little bit dated. Because you know how some stories don't date, right? Like Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns does not date. But the Reign of the Superman, I found it dated very badly. You know,
Superboy especially looks so 90s, right?
He does. The leather jacket, the wannabe.
Look like now. I wish that the jeans and T-shirt would go away and he put the old suit back on, leather coat. Undercut.
The undercut. Yes.
yeah. Connor L, I think is his name.
Yeah. So I still have that figure on my desk that came out in the Kenner line in '95.
Right. Yeah.
Figure. Love
it. Yes, with Man of Steel. Yeah. Yeah. So with regards to the comics, though, were you guys much into the Larry Hama G.I. Joe run, or you know the Simon Furman Bob Budiansky Transformer run? Or Did you read the mini comics from MOTU? It's all in one question.
I read the mini comics from MOTU. As far as G.I. Joe comics go, again, very much like it's funny is when you were talking about your grandfather saying which He-Man character does he want and picking out Man at Arms. Whereas if you go now, you're like, what's in the store? Like, what is actually here that I can buy? It's not a choice anymore, right? And so when you were going to pick out a comic book, there were so many at the newsstand, and you had your $1.25 or whatever it was, and you're like, okay, well, I gotta make a choice here. So I would pick, you know, mostly Superman and Green Lantern stuff as a kid.
Right. Yeah.
But when we would go camping in the summertime, we go camping for 2-3 weeks again, because it's all crown land and we're outdoorsy people. My mom would buy us, you know, a bunch of comic books for the trip. And so that's when I would double down and get some G.I. Joe stuff and some Transformer stuff and expand a little bit. So I have very fond memories of reading G.I. Joe in the top bunk of the camper.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah. I am curious because I didn't read the mini comics too much from MOTU because I was way too young. They were just paper to me. Yeah. But Transformers and G.I. Joe comics, I would just get the individual issue here or there. And then as I got older, more and more people talked about the G.I. Joe comics and the legendary Larry Hama run. And I did get a number of years ago the first 10 issues in trade paperback form. And I liked the introduction of Quinn the Tracker. I liked the introduction of the October Guard, those early issues, and the types of missions they had. I don't know, if from your guys' experience, do the G.I. Joe comics, are they really dated, or would you still recommend them to this day?
I would still recommend the Larry Hama run. I think it's fantastic.
I think,
yeah, because I haven't finished it. That's what I'm trying to say. I haven't finished it.
Yeah, finish it. You love it.
So, like Adam, I was only picking up, you know, a few issues here and there for G.I. Joe. Like I was already deep into Marvel Comics superhero stuff, and I didn't have an issue with military style comic books. That was fine because I used to pick up the little, you know, what are they, quarter size comics out of you know, very tiny ones. Yeah, and I used to enjoy those too. But it was, I guess, when you pick up, you got 3 stories when you're looking at G.I. Joe, right? You've got whatever it's telling you on the file card is its own story, right? You've got whatever's happening in the animated series, which is its own story, and then you've got whatever's happening in the comic book, and then I guess whatever you make up in your playtime.
Right. So
because there wasn't a connection necessarily for the comic book with any of the other stuff. It didn't matter when I jumped in or out of it. You know, I could just, if I was picking it up, I was picking it up because I was essentially looking at toys.
Yeah.
Right. So I remember I remember an issue with, it had Firefly now in his, what version was that? Was that the one where he's got his new outfit now? He's no longer in the camouflage. He's got the green sort of,
the version 2 from 92 and 93.
Yeah,
right. So he's in it, and a lot of ninjas are showing up now too. So you know, it's a full departure from most of the military stuff at that stage. But yeah, it was essentially just me looking at toys. The story was irrelevant, I guess, and because I wasn't following it every month, it didn't really matter to me. I'd just pick it up, have a look, have a flip through it, roll it up, put it in my back pocket, and go and play.
I think that rolls over and holds true with the Masters of the Universe mini comics as well. Like you had your content on TV, plus you had the more gritty, real content that I was creating in my own world. But the mini comics were just kind of like these windows, because again, as adults, we're like, oh, the continuity is different, but it didn't matter. We're just like, there's these pictures of the things that I love doing stuff, right? When it comes to movies, I always say there's a big monkey factor. Whereas if you put a big enough monkey in any movie, it's at least 20% more enjoyable than it should be, because anytime you're watching a big movie do stuff, it's enjoyable, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with these toy-based comic books. You're like, it doesn't matter what's going on there. I get to see my toys doing things, and I think it kind of validates the fact that you have those toys. It's like when you talk about the rare, you know, cameos on Masters of the Universe, where you'd see like Stratos or Buzz-Off would show up. It would validate the fact that you had that toy in your collection. Like, this is great. Or even like in Transformers, where it wasn't like, you know, the core 8. When you saw like an offshoot character that you had, you're like, this is, you know, and you felt connected and part of it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, yeah. Well, you know, I'll take your advice and try to track down some more of the Larry Hama issues, because what I did read, I was like, okay, the artwork, obviously due to technology limitations at the time, is a bit dated, but I'm realizing that the story is still more compelling than other things of that era. So, like just seeing Hawk as a colonel and seeing him found the original team, all of that's really great. But like I said, the first 10 issues were pretty good, right?
Yeah.
So as long as
you said the thing twice, Ken, and I respect your opinion, but when you're saying like the art is dated in those 80s comic books, I think that's where comic book art to me peak. I think it's almost like too refined now. Where I'm like,
oh, I see. You're like it's too rich. It's too rich now. It's like having too much.
Like just give me like the 84 superpowers design guide to me is where DC heroes really kind of apexed.
It's funny because you're at least the second person who said to me, you know what, I disagree. What you have now is that overly rich chocolate to the point that it's too sweet to the point that you don't want any more. Whereas what they had back then, it was more balanced, right? It was more refined, and the pencil art was probably better for some people think so, at least.
Well, I just think it was its own thing. Like it was characters. Instantly identified as comic book art.
Exactly, comic book art versus just whatever computer imagery they can come up with now.
I was gonna say that I think I got used to the computer imagery type art because when I really started collecting comics was by the early 2000s. Yeah. Right, so you've got Batman Hush. So Ken gets back into comic books, and what's the first thing he does? He buys something that Jim Lee penned. Like, well, okay, now you're gonna be really spoiled, right? Yeah. So just in regards to all that, I mean, we've been at it for about 55 minutes now, but I do want to close with a pretty good topic here, and it's just the future of these big three properties. We've seen a surge now with Classified, those great reveals we just had recently. Masters of the Universe. Well, as a collector, I think Masters of the Universe peaked with the Classics line. People are really into the Origins, Masterverse, the CGI animation. I mean, I don't, 2 out of those 3 lines I can't really get into. But I mean, just the future of it. And Transformers just hasn't stopped, so that's why I didn't mention it. But let's talk a bit about what we got going forward. Are we in the golden age? Because I think we are. I think we're in a new golden age.
Nope.
No.
This here. Let this be. This is where we were, right? Collecting toys back in the day, right? The pinnacle, the real golden age of action figures, right? This here is the future of it, right? And what they're doing is they're starting to meet. And eventually, the future of the line and the past of the line are going to go. And when that happens, and it's going to happen because each one in this room are going to one day no longer be living in this world. And the people who are supposed to pick it up and move forward with in the future, like our children, aren't going to care about it. There is no future. We are literally the ones collecting it. We're it. Other than that, there's no future for it. It's gonna go. You might get. No, sorry, Adam. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say to that point. I think too. When you say we're in the golden age, Ken, I've struggled in the last few years, like in like philosophically, like trying to figure out the whole idea of collecting, and I've stopped buying anything modern. Like I can't do it. And so what came to me is that I love toys that were once a plaything. And so the Classifieds being released now are not intended to be a plaything. They're being marketed to you at 40 years old, and that's what they're intended. And I'm like, to me, I'm like, they kind of lost kind of their fun and their innocence of being a plaything. Now the Origins line, it appears to be being sold as a plaything, but I would say if they were being honestly marketed as a plaything, that they wouldn't have those really weak wrists that kids can break off and lose. They would there's a reason that I have 60 vintage Masters of the Universe behind me here that are still intact, is because they're rock solid. You got to replace the rubber bands in their legs. But so for me, the only things I collect now are things that were originally intended to be a plaything. And so I think the future in collecting lines is new intellectual properties that are being marketed towards kids. Like, stop, don't give me another He-Man. I have He-Man, I have Battle Cat, I have Sergeant Slaughter, I have an Optimus Prime in my case. He has no hands, but I have one. But
he makes a fine truck, though.
Right? Give me something else. Right? Give me something new. We as collectors will buy anything that's out there because we like to collect things. Right?
Yeah.
You saw Masters of the Universe fans in forums and online saying, like, the new animation show looks awful. I don't want anything to do with it. It's really, really terrible. look at this figure that I bought. I bought this Skeletor. Oh, I bought
right,
this.
Right. Yeah.
Because we want to acquire things. But give me something new. Like when you talked about classics being like the quintessential He-Man line, and I think it's the most deep, and I love what they did with it. But to me, the classic, like the quintessential line is the 82 Masters of the Universe line. And I think the future in collecting that line is the fans who expand it in that form factor. So the ones who are like going to make customs and do that kind of neat stuff, like Stan Solo doing Star Wars stuff. Like I think that's where the future of that lies.
I just bought some of his stuff actually. It's pretty good.
Because those are designed with the idea of this could be a plaything, right? This is going to be rugged. It's meant for children to be enjoyable, not just for the three of us to say, well, now I've gone from 45 Sergeant Slaughters to 46 Sergeant Slaughters, and I need to get the next one. I remember the moment I walked out of the store and I had a Batman versus Superman figure in my hand. And I was like, I just paid $30 for this figure and I hated the movie. And I hate the way this Superman looks.
Right.
But I bought it because it's a Superman figure. I need to collect them all. But all I really need is a 1984 Superpowers Kenner Superman. That's the one I'm looking at. And so to me, I think the future is let's get new product out that kids need to play with, because too many kids are on screens now and not playing in the mud or the pool or the ditches with their G.I. Joes. And
were the Fortnite action figures popular where you guys were? Because they were not popular here with kids.
They weren't, because kids would rather just play Fortnite.
Well, exactly.
They're hit or miss. They're hit or miss. Like you will see the Fortnite end cap at my Toys R Us, but like, do I see kids grabbing them off the shelves left, right, and center? Not really. Like they do move, but maybe not at the rate that I expect. At least when I'm there, the odd time that I go in. As for the whole Golden Age thing, I'm gonna come at this from a completely different angle from what you guys have just said. And yes, I agree. I agree that we are it. Like once we're dead, these properties go, and kids need new things. But on the note of doubling down on the collector, because the collector market's going to go another good number of years. Like, we're not going anywhere in the next 5 years, right? At least I don't think we are. But like I look at my my Transformer shelves, and like, you got the Generation 1, like the innocence of the 80s, that part is going to be lost. The simplicity, the goofiness, the cheesy lines, that's lost. But when you've taken that and you've kind of like tried to perfect it with the Masterpiece line, and not just the Masterpiece, but like the War for Cybertron, the Studio 86, all the modern stuff, or like G.I. Joes with their classified, the reactions, the MOTU lines we talked about, wrestling with the Elite series and AEW and all that. There's so many more options for people in our age group. So it feels like the market is bigger than it is. I know we have that perception of ourselves, and it's not really a common thing. But at the same time, like you were saying there, Adam, kids tend to like that CGI He-Man show more, right? I don't know how big it's going to get because, the jury's still out on it, right? But hopefully that peaks, right? I think that Transformers isn't going anywhere at all. Now, when you say Optimus Prime, people may stop associating him with the 80s red truck and start thinking of him automatically as the Michael Bay creation, which on a biased level, I'm not sure that I would want Optimus Prime preserved that way, but if you're just trying to prolong Transformers, okay, it gets the job done. Also, I think Star Wars isn't going anywhere. I think Marvel's not going anywhere. I mean, yes, today is about the big 380s, not the other properties. But I think that there's quite a future there, and that there will be the screens, but people will still have their toys.
But I'll ask you this, Ken, to push back there in a friendly way. So you say Star Wars isn't going anywhere. But if you're a Star Wars collector right now, like if I'm not, I collect Power of the Force 2 because that to me is very nostalgic, and so that's
right. Yeah.
And you can get them super cheap, so I'm in. But what is left on the table that hasn't been done already? Right? What are we really, really waiting for that is going to come out and wow us? And when it does, if it's not perfect, we explode, right? Like when in '78, when the early bird figures came out, and let's be honest, they bore a passing resemblance to the character, right? That's what it was. At best, a passing resemblance. We went nuts for them because we're like, we finally get to have them in our hands. So then we have the Wookiee from Boba Fett come out, and it was a failure.
Yes, it was.
The internet exploded with like rage about the figure. Like, where is the joy in collecting something new and the fun in it? So I think with Star Wars, you know, how many more Han Solos do we need? How many more Luke Skywalkers do we need? Like, I just think
yellow lightsaber Luke Skywalker is so, like, he had the yellow one, right? Yeah. I mean,
the toy, yeah.
That is, yeah. So that is so far removed from how he was portrayed in the movie. But I don't know. Other than a kid saying, "Oh, it was blue in the movie." Other than that, you were still playing Luke Skywalker and having your adventures. Yep. You know, it was just yellow. You know, it didn't matter too much. I don't think, and like, I don't want to sound like a negative Nancy because I love this stuff, right? I love it, but it's not going anywhere outside of us collectors. No kids are going to buy it. No kids are going to care. Kids are already starting to not care about Star Wars. We care about it. We care about it loudly, right? And negatively, very oftenly.
Well, I went to 6 movies because I like 3 other ones.
Right, exactly right. These are all going to go away. I honestly don't think that we need the future kids to have toys. I don't think we need that. I'm not saying that we should definitely have them have all screens and online entertainment either. But go back outside.
Oh, yeah.
Just pick up a stick. You know, go learn how to ride a horse. Do something else. We had toys. We had toys, and we were able to take those toys out and play with those toys outside. And that was great. We had Nintendo and Atari and all of that stuff too, but we weren't stuck in the house. But I just don't think that it's a necessity. And I honestly don't think the toy industry will survive too much longer the way that things are going. Nobody's buying it. The toy aisles are going down in size. The kids' interest in toys are going down. It's not coming back. And even now, action figures are display pieces.
They are.
You know, they call them action figures, but how much action do those Transformers get, Ken? Not a lot, I imagine. Even the newer ones. They have
the articulation and the potential. Will I give them a lot of play action? No.
Well, that's right.
Well,
okay, fair enough.
The money you're paying for them, right? When you're paying almost $40 after taxes for a Marvel Legends figure, like, how apt to play with it are you going to be?
Yeah, Canadian.
Well, that's what I mean, though. It's not cheap to get into collecting action figures either. What kind of kid is going to spend $40 on an action figure where they can get a new video game?
Yeah, fair enough. Now, with regards to popularity, though, and with regards to Star Wars, just circling back to the point there, I mean, there are exceptions to the rule.
What? This is funny. We're going to circle back to the point, guys. In case.
Right. Sorry, we derailed you, Ken. Go back to your point.
Oh no, we're circling back to your point, Adam. We're not circling back to mine. We're circling. Then we stop to the juicy part, which is the Star Wars thing and like where the popularity is. I mean, maybe not as much for kids, maybe a little bit for kids, but also for the casual Disney Plus subscriber. The Mandalorian is going to be the exception to a lot of what we've said here, right? I think that one.
Do your kids watching? Do your kids watch Disney Plus Mandalorian? My kids don't. My kids.
Mine is 6, so I don't think he could tell a Mandalorian from a Halo character. But I just think that a lot of
my kids are right now 11 and 14. So 2 Christmases ago they were 10 and 12, and that's when the Mandalorian dropped, and they were super into it. It was like right at the sweet spot. It was very, very cool. And then I went to Walmart here, and they had Mandalorian figures, and I was like, "Oh, I'll get them, you know, a couple each for the Christmas." It was great, and they were $19 each, and I was like, "I'm not paying $19 for a 3 3/4 inch figure. I'm not doing it. That my kids are good. Like it wasn't something that they super loved. It would be like a neat thing, but I was like, that it's so cost prohibitive to give them a play thing that they're kind of like wish like sort of about, right?" And they really like the show. They really like the show, but I was like, it's not something that's on their list. So I'm like, it's the cost gets me going. When I can buy vintage stuff that's more playable at pennies on the dollar.
Right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like I think the big example of that is like the Hasbro retro Marvel line that came out, right? The 3 and 3/4, like the What If Kenner made Marvel heroes,
Right. Yeah.
And so they're around $16 here in Canada, but I can buy vintage Secret Wars figures for like $5 to $6 each.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, why would I buy a What If retro thing when I can get this actual
retro thing? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's true. And you know what? I like the different perspectives here. I've been told before that I'm just in denial and hoping that things keep blowing up. And what I tell them is what I tell you guys right now. Ignorance is bliss.
No, every time I walk into the toy aisle, I'm like, I'm hoping we see something new, right? I'm hoping we see that,
right?
You know, extreme battle space ranger or something like so give me something new that I can get excited about in my kids.
Yeah, right.
Don't just recycle.
It's all IPs now. Yeah,
right. So that's.
I still can't believe Ken said this is the golden age. Oh, I'm never going to let you live that down, mate. Never, ever, ever. And you said it with such conviction too.
When you're living in denial, you commit and you double down.
But I think
you ask Adam, I treat this like the golden age of wrestling, and he's sitting there like, you just have AEW. How is that a golden age? And I'm just like, because I like it.
I believe 100% that you personally are in your golden age of collecting.
There we go.
I think that's true.
There we go.
That is true.
Yeah.
Love it.
And again, if you're into it, like I always say on my channel, there isn't a wrong way to collect. There's just a wrong way to behave. So like however you guys want to collect, like you go nuts.
Right.
And if you're into like the new stuff, if you like Modern stuff and if you got excited about the Hasbro releases of the new classified stuff, then like that's cool. Like I'm happy for you. But like I have my Sergeant Slaughter. I found him in a ditch in 1986.
That's so cool. That is so cool. What a great story. I love that.
And to me, he's going to be the best Sergeant Slaughter. The second one would be the Hasbro WWF Wrestling Sergeant Slaughter.
Right. Yeah.
I just missed out on bidding one. I just missed out.
Yeah, I got him one Saturday morning with Superfly Snuka from Zellers.
Oh yeah,
incredible match.
Well, I've we had an amazing discussion here. I've humiliated myself, doubled down on humiliating myself. I've still got the egg on my face, and I'm still trying to ask the hot girl out. That's basically what it is. But man, I could not think of a better way to start some sort of getting connected talk, not quite series, but talk show, but with you two guys. And when given the opportunity, I was like, well, who could I have a really riveting discussion about the big 380s, go off topic, but do it so happily that it feels like it's still on topic? I thought of you guys right away. Right.
I think name this series not Getting Connected, but call it Ken Derailed, where you try
Yeah.
just derail you.
Ken Derailed. That's right. I'll put that in the description. Ken got derailed on his chat. But I think if you guys are good to stick around for a bit longer, maybe we could kill the cameras and maybe say goodbye to the audience, and we'll just pick this up another time. But for those of you guys watching on the channel, just subscribe to these two fine gentlemen. When you can, you'll find them on my recommended tab, like I mentioned earlier. And
do it right now. Right
now,
right now, today, because these are the good old days, right, Adam?
There you go. That is a great
the good old days, not the golden age.
Right.
All right. Cool. All right.
Well, thanks for having us.
Yeah. Good to meet you, Adam. Thanks for having us on, Ken. It was an honor to be part of the what is this? The premiere episode. This
is the golden age of Ken's channel.
Golden age of toy connections. Love it.
And with that, peace out.